Welcome to another conversation with Convesio. Today we have the one, the only. It's Nate Stewart from Bigcommerce. Nate, mate, how are you doing?
I'm great, mate. How you doing?
I'm also doing great, mate. Absolutely loving life, Nate. And I'm loving those headphones. They are epic. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah. So back in the day, I can show a little, the tattoos I'm rocking here. Was a musician for a while, a couple bands, and these headphones kind of remind me of those years. So
Yeah.
they're nice studio quality. So
Uh-huh.
it gets me out of feeling like I'm like in a job all like 8 hour, 10 hour, whatever hours a day. And sometimes like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm just creating.
I'm
Right.
just
Puts
a
me in a creative
DJ.
mode.
I
Yeah.
like it. Yeah. So I've just got my cheap Amazon ones on. So, you know, but we're all cool. So for the folks who don't know who you are, Nate, could you give us maybe a quick potted history of the world of Nate, who you are, where you're from, what you do, etc.
Yeah, grew up in the East Coast where there wasn't a lot of tech and self-taught myself the web
Hmm.
early days. So when everybody was still building more like just buy buttons, if you will, like a page with a button to send someone PayPal counted as an e-commerce site. I
Yeah.
started kind of there, built out an agency, kind of a boutique agency, and learned e-com and whatnot, and just started picking up, kind of individuals, brands, companies I was working with. Got into a couple really crazy, weird things like working with, a company that was partnered with Blockbuster to automate like reselling used like DVDs and shipping them out like Netflix. I mean, weird things, but a lot of it was around ecom, and that
Yeah.
led me to the West Coast, where I worked with a company that had both online and offline problems, and that led me from the 10 years in agency world to brick and mortar software. So I founded a company called Zing, so Zing Checkout. That was a
Uh-huh.
point of sale web-based point of sale, worked across all devices. That was back in, I don't want to date myself too much, but a little bit before Square. And
Okay.
at the time I was building it, everyone was like, no one wants a point of sale that runs on a phone or a laptop or anything. They want these big point of sales. And
Yeah, man.
it's like, I don't know. I think I worked a
Yeah.
lot on online commerce. I think the same thing should kind of apply there. But then Square came out and it
Yeah.
turned instantaneously from no one wants this to, well, you've already been beaten because Square came out and, there's game over. So I went through that, learning experience, raised some
Yeah.
money, got an awesome co-founder and built a little team, ended up about that's around 5 years. Then that led me to moving to Austin from the West Coast.
Uh-huh.
And I met someone at Bigcommerce that
Yeah.
is headquartered in Austin, and they had a integration fund thing they were doing to incentivize people to build onto the Bigcommerce platform. So we're like, we'll do that. It's like, I think it's something like 20K, the max amount you could get. It's like, oh man, we could build an integration into Bigcommerce in like a day. And just like, then we could, put that on the VC money and go. Now it took a lot longer and we put a lot of love into that integration. And I think at the
Yeah.
time we were the only web-based, the only point of sale that really integrated the way we did, because we had that in an integration layer that also hooked into like QuickBooks and
Mhm.
MailChimp and others. So they had a point of sale strategy they were attempting to build. First, they wanted to build their own, and then they wanted to do an integration strategy. So we were
Yeah.
we could be both things. We could be both the
Yeah.
point of sale, also the integration layer. Ended up, going through one round where it's like, this doesn't really fit as joining up Bigcommerce. We're not ready to be acquired on the point of sale side. But then it shifted to the open kind of partnership. Why don't we get all the point of sales to integrate with us and use some of your tech for that and other omni-channel things? So
Yeah.
that made more sense. The leadership at the time we gelled with more, and it's like, hey, let's do this. So that they acquired Zing and came on board there. I've been at Bigcommerce now, coming up on next year would be my 10th year. Which, if you would have told me when sold my company, I would have been like, there's no way I'm staying 10 years. But we've been on a ride. We went public a couple years ago. That was a journey to go public. A lot of
Yeah.
learnings. Have met, thousands of people through my journey around the world at BigCommerce. And really, like, I started as a partner. I started outside. I've
Yeah.
started always being the one integrating and building on somebody else's platform. So being able to lead, some of the development and strategy and ideation around the platform and help others build on top continues to be a joyful experience. Doesn't mean it's not without pain sometimes, but going through the past 10 years and taking it from what is more of a closed proprietary system into
Yeah.
something that is truly open. Like, we really think we're the most open SaaS e-com platform out there, and we've acquired other companies, and now I get to work with really smart, founder level people and ambitious, longtime OG BC peeps that care about the company a lot. So that brings us here. Not now I'm our SVP of platform strategy. I think a lot about the future, as well as making sure what we picked to do in the past that's important,
Yeah.
we can execute on and we get help. And the platform piece of it means I talk a lot, I think a lot about the community, like the ecosystem, how
Yeah.
people are building, and to be frank, like, that is the most rewarding part. Like, you succeed, somebody I haven't even met yet succeeds because of some decision I've been a part of making. That what it's all about to me.
Mate, your energy would suggest to me that you're going to be there for at least another 10, if not 20 years, because it sounds like you are absolutely loving it. And I'm just like, I want to jump on a plane and come and join you. It sounds amazing. Could you give us a brief overview then of Bigcommerce itself, and specifically kind of what it offers as well to online retailers?
Yeah, so we've been, again, I'll explain kind of the journey. That way just
Yeah.
people will know, because somebody might know zero about Bigcommerce. And I think when you look at the name Bigcommerce, obviously it's probably for, bigger sellers that
Uh-huh.
have commerce, right? Well, it actually started as trying to democratize all of the features that bigger merchants had, bigger online stores had, to everyone. So
Yeah.
the story was more of a kind of small business. You now get, a lot of features you would have to pay. Well, you couldn't pay for, right? Because you didn't have a big development team. You didn't have a designer. So we kind of like provided the tools. And a lot of that started before I joined, just to be clear, like,
Mhm.
many other smart people, many smarter than me, kicked
Yeah.
off that off about 15 plus years ago. So we went from there. We transitioned into, okay, like, what's unique about the company? What's differentiated to market? And more online store, creation platforms came out, more and more commerce platforms came out. And it probably was about 6, 7 years ago where the strategy shifted, pretty aggressively into, okay, well, all of the market has grown. E-commerce has gone from, sub 10% of the transactions in the world to over that. It's growing. Well, now there's bigger companies that need even more features, and the enterprise, you would say.
Yeah.
But enterprise software is typically really hard. It's not fun to
Mm.
use or develop on. And so, okay, how do we disrupt that space and do it in a way that's unique? And that's really where we started thinking about this concept of open SaaS and
Yeah.
being a core part of it, and open commerce. And how do you build a SaaS company, which gives you a lot out of the box, but retain the value and the philosophies of open source? So
Yeah.
nowadays, we're not just for smaller merchants. And if anything, we have many more larger merchants that fit into, hey, I've started to scale. I've started on a platform or maybe on BigCommerce, and I
Mhm.
started just selling my goods on my online store. But now I have way more needs and requirements. I have a
Mm.
warehouse or multiple warehouses. I sell on Amazon and eBay, and Target is talking to me about selling on their new marketplace. And I sell on TikTok, and I both on videos and on, there's a million things there. So you have all of these like integration
Yeah.
points. So what do you need then? You need great APIs that are well documented, open, an ecosystem, a vibrant ecosystem of e-commerce kind of focused agencies and developers
Yeah.
that's what they do day in, day out. And it's done in a way where, like, how do we lift all boats? How does everyone get rewarded from that? So we're much more of a platform for
Yeah.
commerce now. And we've acquired a couple companies along the way that are completely separate, but integrate, of course, really well into our suite, our open suite, if you want to call it. We have
Yeah.
Feedonomics, who does best in class feed
Uh-huh.
management and AI categorization of your data and ingress, like egress type of like ELT things at
Yeah.
scale that no one else is really doing in market. You can use them with WooCommerce. You can use them with Shopify. you can use them not just with our Bigcommerce commerce platform. We acquired MakeSwift last year. Awesome team, awesome product. We'll talk more in the future about it, but right now you can go to makeswift.com, sign up, and not have anything to do with Bigcommerce. You just build a beautiful marketing site. Of course, it's going to work really well with our system. So anything like basically saying we started as just creating an online store. Now we're really a platform for commerce where you can scale from today into 10 years from now. And you're going to do it in a way where you have more control. You can work with the agencies or developers you want. You can work on yourself. You can extend it into a different front end. You can use our tools or build your own. So it's, if anything, like there's a lot, I know out of the WordPress community here. We want you to work the way that is the WordPress way, if that's the way you want to work, and then kind of blend in what we bring to the table. Because it's not all ideas that are the best are created here. It's you might have an idea that is better than what we can come up with for your use case, and you should be able to operate like that. And all of that said, the most relatable thing here is we have a WordPress plugin we built for years. That's why I'm in the space. Been to so many different WordCamps and State of the Unions and all the different things. And I love the WordPress community. And if anything, I try to learn what can we take that's positive from the community and give back, which I'm sure we can talk about the rest of the call.
Mate, that's awesome. But would I be right then in thinking that the big, as it were, in Bigcommerce not only refers to companies that are growing and scaling, but big as in features? So even if you are a smaller operation, you can get access to a wider range of features. You can still be a small company and have 2 warehouses and need to do pick and pack and stock management and not sell things that are no longer in stock and all that sort of stuff. So these are features that we can get access to rather than trying to cobble together solutions online through multiple different resources, etc., which is something that I've done in the past and it doesn't work very well. It's been very stressful. Would that be a fair assumption or a fair analysis?
100%.
Yes, good. That means I listened. Top marks. That is great. Now, one thing we're seeing, I've seen many times is successful WooCommerce store owners. They're growing. They've reached a point where they're starting to consider, oh, well, maybe I need to move platforms, or maybe the WordPress community can't support me anymore, or whatever. So how does Bigcommerce offer an alternative that allows them to scale whilst kind of still embracing open source, those roots?
Well, one I kind of mentioned before in that Feedonomics, when I say feed management, what I really mean there is there are 400 or 500 plus channels out there that you could send your catalog, your availability of your inventory, all of those details to. It's not only Amazon and eBay and the bigger channels. I mean, there's geo-specific channels in different regions of the world. As you can imagine, everybody has kind of their own unique marketplace in their region that sometimes is more popular than Amazon, if you believe it. And managing 20 even or 10 is super hard, much less 100 different opportunities or more. So as a WooCommerce merchant, if you're trying to go beyond just selling on, like, one, you're probably using Google Shopping because everybody has analytics and shopping, in Google. And then you go, now I want to broadcast on Facebook. I have an Instagram that I want my, feeds there. I want to now go to marketplaces. So I'm looking at the marketplace plugins on adding onto Woo. Well, as we know, every time a visitor hits your site and hits that cron and it's processing all this information, at a certain point, you hit the limit of what WordPress is naturally best at doing. It doesn't mean it can't do. So then it's like, all right, you have a decision to make. I could migrate everything off WordPress, which is painful. And quite frankly, I like WordPress. Why would I do that? So you could go to Feedonomics, which is a part of Bigcommerce, and say, I just want Feedonomics to help scale WooCommerce. I want to send my data from WooCommerce to Feedonomics, which they can, there's a connection for that already. And now take the load off of my WordPress instance. So that's one way of working with Bigcommerce.
So for the layman, that would be I'm kind of inputting my catalog and everything in the WooCommerce side, but the actual point of sales, everything's all happening over at Feedonomics?
So it would be WooCommerce powers your site like normal. Instead of there being a plugin like, I don't know, there's marketplace plugins that will help you connect to Amazon, eBay, others that you install on your WooCommerce site. Now, those tax your site. So Feedonomics would
Right.
be
No, I
one
get you.
plugin
Yeah.
that now
Mhm.
is like 1 to 400 if you
Yeah.
want it. Now, keep
Okay.
in mind, we are for merchants that are a little bit more at scale. You don't need to go pay Feedonomics if you just are selling a one channel or two or
Mhm.
experiment with five. It's more of like once you hit that scale point, you don't need
Yeah.
to migrate off of WordPress to get the value there. So that's just one way of working with BigCommerce and Woo and in our companies. The other way is we do have a plugin, BigCommerce for WordPress on WordPress.org. That natively integrates into our APIs directly, and it imports into the WordPress tables some of the product data you would need to use in your templates and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's kind of the inverse in a way. If you're looking at, I'm on Woo, and I really am so commerce centric. I want way more commerce backend apps. Like I want more syncs to ERPs and
Mhm.
OMS and inventory management, warehouse, all those things that happen. They are on backend functionality. Now with Woo, again, you might hit a similar point to where that's taxing your server for every request of another system hitting. So if you use BigCommerce or WordPress, well, yes, you have a similar load from rendering the storefront, but all that backend load is on our servers now. That's happening
Nice.
at our API layer
Yeah.
and our webhook sending out to another. So a lot of that never hits your site. So it kind of makes your WordPress instance more efficient. So that's
Yeah.
the other way you could work with us doing the storefront. There is also the headless composable kind of track where
Mhm.
we have a series of great, amazing GraphQL APIs that you can render pretty much a storefront anywhere. We provided, and over the past year and a half plus, we built Catalyst. So if you go to catalyst.dev, that is our open source MIT licensed storefront that runs on Next.js, and it's
Mhm.
using purely our APIs, meaning there's no special sauce of some internal API that we're like cutting corners. That is our APIs. So that's
Wow.
proof one, you can do everything from API layer. But if
Yeah.
you go to the point where you're like, you know what, I just want to use WordPress as the CMS, as my
Yeah.
kind of application layer and logic. And that's another way you can use BigCommerce. You can go into the front end is decoupled. WordPress is
Mhm.
coming in via content and powering your blog, your pages, maybe a lot of like specialized kind of personalization type things where you're controlling that logic and what you do with it in WordPress because you have maybe a great WordPress developer or you yourself know how to do that. But it's
Mhm.
via API that the front end is using that data. And then we're all the commerce, again, that scalability, security, you lean on it. So that's kind of the three ways someone can work with us. And it's really a matter of where are you in your life cycle? We try really hard to work with you and
Uh,
not tell you
yeah.
what to do.
Well, I guess, and then the fourth way is to just go all in with you as well. So, if that's right, then this kind of goes right back to the earlier statement you made, where the vision of BigCommerce here is to allow people to work in the way that they want to, and you've just described several scenarios there where there can be the best of all worlds working together along, with the open source platform and working with you guys. Now, you did mention earlier the phrase open SaaS commerce, and you kind of touched on it lightly, but could you just kind of go in a little deeper on kind of what the concept of open SaaS commerce is and kind of how that relates to open source principles?
Yeah. And I'll go a little bit deeper into where it came from. It actually came from uh, a about a year of research into different communities and mainly the WordPress community. So before we ever built the plugin, we were trying to frame out the strategy of where is commerce and where is content actually happening.
Yeah.
And what happened is we found we had hundreds of merchants at that time. This is like 8 years ago or something, like a while, using WordPress as the site, and then shop dot or slash shop was BigCommerce. So we
Hmm.
already had people using it that way. So went out to a lot of WordCamps around the world and tried to learn, okay, is this consistent and like what's happening here? And the big powerful moment is like this is all about openness. This is all about like the freedom, flexibility, everything. Yes, in hindsight, that's obvious, but keep in mind, not only me, but a lot of people in tech that are building platforms are so into that SaaS mindset of you have to control every piece because how can you get to growth or quality? or anything without it. So that kind of broke down the barriers of, wait a minute, openness could be a differentiator, because I don't see anybody in the SaaS space like kind of applying these principles there, right? You kind of are picking sides. They're not blending them. So we work together as kind of a team internally to go, okay, like what can we pull out of this? And one, we decided we should build a plugin that came out of it, but open SaaS in terms of, in parallel, the messaging of like, what are we here for? Like, what's our purpose? And what do we want to differentiate? That kind of came out of that era. And what it really means is a blend between the best of open source and the best of SaaS. So we try to be a blend where it helps the end user or help their ecosystem. So if you're coming into Bigcommerce as in our ecosystem and you've never built on a SaaS platform, you're going to feel a lot more at home than you would at another SaaS platform. And it's not only for the WordPress community. I hear all the time, Magento developers, great, open source platform, especially from the before Adobe, picked it up, and now it's kind of changed a little bit more into like purely the SaaS kind of focus. But a lot of people come from the Magento side and go, hey, this feels kind of familiar, the way you're talking to developers, the way that your platform is extensible. But I know I get the benefits of SaaS, but if I don't want certain pieces of it, it's not like you prevent me from doing it. It's still my choice. So that's really open SaaS in a nutshell. Like, blend it as much as we can so our end user is more in control. So as a developer, you feel more comfortable and you can kind of build your own, if you choose to, vision off of our platform.
That's awesome. You did mention as well community. Do you guys have quite a vibrant community as well of people very similar to, say, the WordPress community who are kind of sharing what they're doing and supporting each other?
100%. Yeah, we actually have a big summit in Austin next week, and I'll be there along with DevRel team, a lot of our leaders across like our platform side of the biz that love talking to our, not only our merchants, but really our developers, our agencies, the builders, the creators. And we always have a blast there. And I think that's what people mean when they say, oh, it feels kind of familiar to Magento or WordPress. It's that.
It feels like it's that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and look, we're not 100% the same. Like we don't have things like come in and have a contributor day and just contribute back to, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. And now, do I wish we could have that type of momentum? Of course. But I really mean in terms of how it feels to work with people, the openness, both philosophically as well as, just working, like how we work and how we want you to succeed as much as we do.
Now, you mentioned two phrases that are relatively new to me. I'm a long-time web developer, etc., but I've heard both of these phrases mentioned. I'm not sure if they're connected or whether they're two different things. I understand the concept of, say, a headless WordPress site. We used to do that back in the day. But you mentioned headless commerce and composable commerce. Can you just kind of deep dive into what they are a little bit for those that might have, like me, just want a little bit more detail?
Yeah. So we're on a thread here. We're pulling on a thread, so they're kind of related. The way I view it historically is headless in the early days was really the kind of where your data is separated from where it's rendering. So it's very like basic kind of, okay, you have your content data in WordPress and you want it to render in like Gatsby. Like I know Next is what a lot of people talk about now, but years ago, it was like Gatsby was really big in Drupal and in WordPress land. And it was like, okay, that's headless. That's the front end of I'm in web developer land. That's HTML, CSS, JavaScript there. Yep. My APIs live over here. And that's headless, just decoupling it in a very pure state. From us, that we thought about it the same way in the commerce land. It's we are APIs. How do you connect our APIs to a website, basically, like a framework, and render it? And what's interesting is we've had that for a while. And we just marketed it back in the day, because you look at like mobile apps. Well, how does a mobile app ever work? And that's like 2007, right? Coming out and whatnot.
That's worked in the same way for years, hasn't it?
Right. Yeah. It's like API that is hitting the front end. But I think it made sense for marketing to go, if your platform couldn't do headless, it kind of meant you didn't have the APIs. So headless in the beginning, when people started marketing, it meant we have complete APIs. You can do what you want. Now, Composable, where we are, I think now, and this is kind of what I tend to use Composable more than headless, because Composable is a little bit more of a productized lens. Definitely the way that we're shooting for is we want to break down those barriers of, cool, I can have my data here and my front end here, but how do I do it? Oh, I get a developer or get an agency or some big, multi-month, if not year plus project. Yeah. Well, why can't I get the benefits of that approach with a point and click? Like, why can't I just go in and say, well, I want my website here to connect with commerce and content, and it just work. So I think Composable is almost an ambition to make headless easy to use. Is the way I see it.
Is this what, going for like a no-code, low-code sort of setup where you can do the far more complex things, create the interfaces, almost drag and drop your connections to whatever it is you want to make happen, and Bob's your uncle and Fanny's your aunt, off you go?
Yeah. And I think that why I call it ambition is most companies, when they talk about Composable, it's really an elevated headless thing, which means they're now using the term Composable, and they may have some tools, meaning you can go to their developer, center and go, here's a script to ease, migrating data or integrating like your, here's how to like code a custom block. And sure, it lowers the barrier of entry because you don't have to do as much thinking, but it's not productized. It's not like you go into a control panel and you say, I want to connect WordPress with Bigcommerce, and I want it on this like really high performance framework and on the front end, and it just works. So that's where we view Composable. Our goal, and we're pretty close to it, that we're going to be announcing more things as we go. But catalyst.dev, if you go there, that's kind of the vision for how we view Composable. It should be everything in the box, easily, like you have one CLI command and you're going, and you can connect other tools like WordPress or like other like Contentful, Headless CMS, Algolia on search. That should kind of be seconds away from adding. And then eventually when you go past that, wait a minute, aren't we back in the same cycle? Yeah, once we make Composable easy enough, it doesn't look like a complex product anymore. It just looks like you get all the benefits of what? Openness with all the benefits of SaaS. And that's again where like our kind of purpose there is, how do we really blend it so much that everybody can access the benefits of open source and not have to be a rocket scientist to get there? So again, I'm not saying we're there. So if you go and judge us about like, I went into your product,
the vision.
But that is the vision. We put a lot of effort into it. And that's where I get most excited about, because it blends kind of like the value created for our actual users. Like, the people working on their businesses every day need more innovative technology, need to keep up, but they don't want to hire their own dev teams all the time and spend $1 million. They can't do that often. And then people that come in with VC capital and all these things, like they end up blowing them away just because they have more money to spend on dev time. Like, how do we lower it to where you get more of the benefits of everyone, and we're kind of democratizing the very, very top enterprise functionality to more and more people?
Which is exactly what you guys started all those years ago as well, was that democratization. Yeah. It's so cool. So you've continued with that throughout. You're not kind of lost sight of what you're doing. Companies will very often get big and will be focused on the numbers, etc. You've just continued with that democratization. I'm really, really impressed, mate. Now, you have recently partnered with Conversio. There was an announcement a little while back. Can you tell us a little bit more about that collaboration?
Yeah. So I think it kind of goes back to the openness. Like, we've been looking for companies to partner with our plugin, with our composable strategy, that incorporating WordPress. And we have to do it in an open way. If we only work on it ourselves, which for years, to be clear, that's what we kind of did. We worked with Modern Tribe and our team, but that was almost like we worked on it from what's the next sprint? What's the next goal? And it was a project. And I think what we lost in a way was the value that is the WordPress community. So we're trying to get back to, all right, who are the experts in the WordPress community that can guide us, push us? We push together to get to that blend. And Conversio, we've been working for a couple months, getting to know each other. and we've introed Conversio to some of our merchants that are having some issues maybe with working through like how to evolve the plugin. It's just been great. So I think we pulled the trigger and said we should do more openly. Like, let's just talk about working together. And that way, if somebody's out there and they're going, okay, well, yeah, I'm using Bigcommerce for WordPress and I kind of didn't know what to do. Well, now, Conversio can be there. Like, if you need to optimize any part of that stack, they're there. Also, you can know now that we're working together to say, what's the future roadmap? Like, should we invest in the sync side of it? Should we look at more of the headless approach? Like, whatever. So I think it's a true kind of open partnership. And the next step is actually what I can't tell you because we need to do that, which is plan the future, plan out kind of all that. And I believe what we decided so far is we'll do that openly on the repo. We'll have issues and milestones, and anybody can go in and question what we put up there or suggest. And hopefully some people listening here are excited and contribute. If you want to do that, I'm all ears. Like, email me at nate.stewart@bigcommerce.com with your ideas, or hit me up on the repo, and I'll make sure the team includes you in on the process.
That's so cool. Now, you mentioned that a big part of your job is to look in the crystal ball. So as we come into land, buddy, have you any predictions for e-commerce online in the next 10 years? What are you looking forward to the most, or predicting?
Well, the composable shift, like I think all of us that have seen the web evolve for enough, we know there's cycles, and it's like, oh, like thin client. Is that like the cloud? Is that, everything kind of goes around, and composability will make way for all of the more complex, like open, like the extensibility things, like unlimited flexibility. Well, everybody knows if you say unlimited flexibility, that's cost. I think there's going to be a number of companies that innovate, and we intend to be one of them, to where it really blurs the line between a product that you get everything out of the box and one that also is extendable with what you need it to be without the downsides.
So, mate, thank you so much for your time. This has been incredible, and I am super excited about the future. I think you and me need to stay friends because I want to see what the future of e-commerce looks like, buddy. And it looks like you and Bigcommerce, with your partnerships with companies like Conversio, etc., are charging on into the future and creating something very, very exciting. So can you just share with us again the email address for people to connect with you? And then, bud, we will say goodbye.
Sure. Yeah, nate.stewart@bigcommerce.com. And if you search for nate.stewart or Nate on LinkedIn, I also show up, but there's someone from Cockroach Labs that you might click on too. But if you see two people, just connect with them both. That's the universe telling you that you need to connect with more Nate Stewarts.
Absolutely, Nate, mate. Thank you so much for your time. Take care, and we'll have you on again soon. Cheerio.